Hello, my name's Simon. I'm a good friend of Alan and Caroline's. We met Alan and Caroline 3 years ago when we were looking for a property in Spain. Me and my wife became good friends with Alan and Caroline. We meet up once a week for a curry and a good chat. Having got to know Alan quite well, he began to open up about his previous life when he was an active alcoholic. I found his story quite fascinating, and he was very passionate about the subject. Now he's in recovery. One thing Alan loves to do is try to raise awareness of this devastating disease and to support others in steering clear of any alcohol-related harm. The videos we made are not rehearsed, as Alan doesn't know any of the questions I ask him. We hope you find some of the content worthwhile. So Al, could you explain how your website Real Als Alcoholism and your resource Real Als Measures came about? What made you put together all this valuable information on the website?
Well, it's been in process for, blimey, it's got to be coming up for 9 years. It's gone through various stages. It started off really when I went into school. I was just about coming up for a year sober. And I went in quite a few comprehensive schools talking to youngsters about my addiction. But of course, my public health background, I was aware then of some of the facts and the information. You know, part of my master's degree was looking at diseases within populations. People generally will know one or two people that have got, perhaps drink a bit too much, but they may not know anyone in the next street from where they live or in the next town. We don't know these things, but when you start looking statistically within populations, then it hits you just how prevalent these problems are. So I was already aware when I was stood in front of a class of 30 children. I could picture myself stood there now talking to kids, and you've got 30 children there, and 7.5 of these kids, 7.5 statistically are going to be drinking to excess, which is 1 in 4 of adults, effectively, when they get older. And approximately 2 of these are going to become alcoholic. And you're looking at these kids and you're thinking, right, they've got all their futures in front of them. And nothing's being done. Nothing's being done to try and put that, to prevent that from happening, nothing holistically. So I realised, I didn't know what I was going to do work-wise when I started getting back into recovery, but it came to me, and there was a realisation that I could create research, put together an alcohol schools curriculum.
Why did you go into the school initially? Who invited you?
I was doing voluntary work for Alcoholics Anonymous, and I was on their, what they call their education, their public awareness group.
As a volunteer?
Yeah, so I was going into, I went into the university talking to final year medical doctors, students, who again weren't, I think they do about 6 hours education, on alcohol, so I don't know whether, that may have changed. This is going back, 16 years ago. But, and I went into the various different places, but quite a lot of schools. And it was obvious, it was apparent straight away that there were many of these children were suffering either from what their parent or parents or family members were drinking, or actually what they were drinking themselves, which was particularly worrying. And how do I know that? Well, because they were coming up to me after the lessons, and just asking pertinent questions. But what I discovered was giving them proper information, being true to them, they would absorb it. So it wasn't a case of preaching; it was just giving people the facts and letting them decide for themselves. They could rationalise it with their own experiences, and these were just teenagers. And I was also aware at the time that what's called the PSHE in Wales, the personal social health education aspect of education, there's an element in there about substances, but the majority of the time it was talking about illicit substances, and they would, other drugs. And alcohol really wasn't being covered. And when it would usually be the local bobby would pop in and talk to them about drink driving. So there was obviously a very big void. There was a gap, particularly because of the prevalence, the number of these children. You said if it only affected 1 in 1,000, you could say, well, yeah, but even then, there's a small chance. No, it's not. This is serious stuff. But there was no campaign that, and I don't believe there is now.
No.
So I set out to create a curriculum. I researched it, put it together. I went into schools then with health advisors for the schools. We modified it slightly. We presented it. I gave the talks, and it was going to be rolled out to all comprehensive schools in Wales, and I had it translated into Welsh and all of that. And anyway, it never happened. Then there was a possibility that it might be rolled out to all schools in the United Kingdom. And I thought, wow, this is my destiny. This is what I was meant to do, clearly. So it was piloted again, and it was a major success. But for some reason, it never happened, and there still isn't an educational curriculum out there, as far as I'm aware. But nevertheless, anyway. So the information that I put forward, I felt was too important not to give to people. So it's been updated. It's current. And I just feel everyone deserves to know what they're up against if they drink ethanol. And I just wanted to give people the information so that I didn't have in my day. The only thing I was, made aware of was, drink driving like that. That was the only. And anyway, the public information messages out there now. I mean, they use plasticine models. They bear no resemblance to reality whatsoever. So I wanted to create something that people, a bit more like the drinks industry advertising. Billions are spent on advertising, and yet, in comparison to public awareness campaigns.
So how would you say your website can help other people that may be drinking to excess?
Well, what I've done, I've created what's like a 5-stage risk calculator, for want of a better expression. Everyone will fall somewhere on that 0 to 5, depending on their drinking pattern. So it's simply a case of looking at your drinking pattern. You can then identify what your level of risk is, whether it's dangerous, whether it's moderate, whether it's low risk, whether it's minimum risk. And then I've created real Als measures, so at any time when somebody drinks, knowing what their risk level is, afterwards they can ask themselves a series of questions for that person to then decide whether their level of risk is acceptable to them. And then they can decide whether they want to reduce that level of risk or not. Very simple, and everyone can use it, and literally can use it to steer themselves clear of harm.
And also a family member could do that, and a friend could do that for somebody they know.
Ideally, this is to be used within the family unit. Drinking alcohol doesn't affect the individual in isolation. It affects everyone, like a droplet in a pool. The ripple effect affects everyone in that person's vicinity. So it's about time, really, that people started to be open up, be honest, talk about it within the family. Children talk to their parents, parents talk to their children. Use this resource. It's free, it's available, it's simple, it's current, it's up to date. And I just wish I'd had it back in the day.
Yeah. You've also written a very interesting second book on your life living as an alcoholic and recovery. How long did that take to write, and who can that help?
Well, I've only just finished it. I got to my 60th birthday, so it covers all my life from birth up to then, and it's taken me 8 years to write. The reason being, I had to wait for events in my life to happen before I could write about them. But it's all in there. I'm not pulling any punches. It's honest. It's straight to the point. Anyone that drinks alcohol, I think, will be fascinated by this story.
Well, I've read your first book, and I don't drink, and I found it fascinating. So
yeah, what I would like to happen is for people's perceptions to just change slightly. See, a lot of harm can be minimised or reduced with subtle changes to a person's drinking pattern. This is not necessarily about stopping drinking. This is about taking a step back, right? Ignoring all the advertising, propaganda. Look at it from a scientific point of view. This is a very addictive substance that the body doesn't like. It's a poison, and the body has to get rid of it. It has to dispose of it, neutralise it, and remove it. And the after effects and the consequences are very severe. So what I would like is for people to just take a step back and be objective about it. Use my information, read it,
share
it, and discover.
Yeah.
Discover where they are, what it's doing to them, what effect it's having in their family, and then just take appropriate measures. Who wants to be, living a life that's been undermined all the time by a toxic substance? And I think it's this illusion that, and I had it, no different than anybody else, that, alcohol's great, it's a fun thing. Most of us like to have a drink. It's time to take a step back and look at this objectively. Too many people destroying too many families, too many lives, it's killing too many people, and it is time that it was looked at for what it is. I'm just asking people to see the truth.